Welcome. Today I have Virginia Franco. She is someone who works in the world of resumes, and we're going to have an informal Q&A interview session today. Virginia, welcome, and thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So if we could, why don't we just get started? Virginia, could you do an introduction? Tell us a little bit about yourself, your services, and the clients that you serve.
Sure. Well, I always like to start by saying that I wrote resumes for free for years before I knew that anyone did this for a living.
Mhm.
My background is in journalism. That's what my degree was in. And before I realized that this was actually a career path, I used my degree to write for companies, magazines, newspapers, websites, a little bit of everything. And I learned that a lot of the principles that I was taught when I was trained to write for the news apply very much so to career marketing collateral, resumes, LinkedIn, and the like. Um, because of my journalism training, I work with people that have sort of complicated stories to tell, and I do it strictly through interview. I get them on the phone for 90 minutes, 2 hours, and talk through their careers literally from the dawn of day till now,
Mhm.
um, and then write with whatever target they have in mind.
And so when you talk about the journalism, for example,
Mhm.
like what are the things that you take from your journalism background, writing for the news, that you would say would be important for people in writing their resume?
So a lot of the core components of a news story are in resumes and LinkedIn. Think about how you scan the news when you're in a hurry. You open up a
Mhm.
news site or the olden days of newspaper, you scan headlines. And then if the headline grabs you, you'll read those first couple lines right after that, which in
Okay.
journalism was that lead paragraph. Uh, those two components are really important because they tell you what the story is going to be about and they tell you what you want to come back to when you have more time. And so bringing those components into resumes and LinkedIn really replicates that behavior. So all of my resumes have a headline that tells the reader, this is the role that they're targeting. All of my summary paragraphs explain what the story is going to be about. And in the case of resumes, it shows the reader why it makes sense that they're a good fit. And it contains just a few nuggets of detail that are specific to someone's career. That way, if the reader only looks at those two sections, they know what you're targeting, why it makes sense that that's what you're going after, and then they also know a couple things about you that'll differentiate you. Then the experience is like the rest of the story.
Mhm.
And I always call the footnotes are, education, certification, sort of the extras that lend credence to the story and give a little bit more background. The other thing that is just sort of journalism 101 is that you should never bury the lead. So you need to make sure that your most proud accomplishment is the first thing the reader sees when
Mm.
you're describing a job. You need to make sure that that summary paragraph isn't full of just generic stuff that really doesn't stand out from how others describe themselves. Um, so you're making sure that the most poignant points are sort of popping off the page.
And when you think about headlines, that's how I kind of read news and what captures
Yeah.
my attention. And then do I want to continue forward? So you talk about that first section, that summary section. Like, can you give me an
Mhm.
example? Like, what would be something that would stand out, maybe from one of your most recent clients, something that they wrote that stood out that says, wow, this makes me want to read more, or I'm different because of this? Like, what would be some of those tips and tricks that you would give to the listeners about how you'd write that summary section of your resume?
Okay. Well, the headline can be customized, and so you should customize it based on the opportunity. Let's say that you are a customer success manager.
Hmm.
Saying that you are a senior customer success manager sort of tells the reader that you are maybe industry neutral. But if I say that you're a marketing technology SaaS customer success manager, boom, you
Hmm.
have a focus. And so that helps set the stage. Um, what I put in the summary section really depends on what the roles are telling me that they are requiring. So let's say I want to show that I have, let's say the job posting is looking wants someone with Fortune, I don't know, 500 experience or has worked
Hmm.
or emerging tech. I'm going to sort of list the names of the company. I'll say that my experience is grounded in wins working at these three companies. I'll name drop it. If they need someone that um, has experience sort of minimizing customer churn, going back to the customer success one, I will say that, I might throw a stat in about the churn right off the bat in the summary section.
Okay.
And so if someone is applying for a role where or an executive where their leadership style really matters, I might talk a little bit about that. I just wrote for someone who's an AI executive, and she is really dedicated to advancing technology talent and STEM. And so we
Mm,
talked about how she pays it back and forward as a speaker, in media, and then as a board advisor, a board and mentor to these causes.
great. And so just to, can we reiterate and summarize, the summary of the resume is going to be customized and configured for every job that you're applying
Uh,
for, correct?
so what I do when I write for my clients is I ask to see a handful of job postings of interest, and that
Hmm.
allows me to create a summary section that's pretty good to go. But swapping the headline out is an easy lift that can make a big difference to align with whatever you're targeting, whatever the posting is. Um, for mid managers and lower, I'll often include sort of a 2 or 3 lines of skills. Those can be customized. If you have a list of, and this is along in the resume, but if you have a list of technology proficiencies,
Hmm.
and maybe you see one that you didn't think to put, but it's in the job posting, you can swap that in there.
And if you were to say, and working with all of your clients, like what's the number one question or the number one thing that you recommend to your clients when you're working with them about resumes specifically?
Um, I make sure to look at job postings and make sure that the the information that is contained in sort of when you see job postings that have language like must have or at minimum, you need to
Mhm.
make darn sure that what you have in your resume reflects that. So that's number one. Number two,
And
you
do those
absolutely
just curious go in the summary section, or where would you put those if those are the must
So
haves?
it's throughout the document,
Okay.
but you need to make sure that that's in there, because if not, and you apply online, for instance, that very well could be a knockout question that gets programmed in, and so you need to, and you'll get an automatic rejection with that.
Okay.
Um, Having a target is for me not having it is a deal breaker, because otherwise what it forces the reader do is it forces them to go down to your job titles, which sometimes aren't well aligned to what you're going after, because companies
Mm,
call things up, roles all sorts of crazy things.
sure.
The other piece that I get on my soapbox a lot about is making sure that your resume is just as easy to read, whether someone prints it out, which happens later or down the road in the interview process, or that the person can read it on their phone, which is what often happens at the beginning. You can pretty much count on the reader that first rounds of reads are going to happen on some sort of a screen. And so we read really differently online. And if you don't take it into account, it can make for a hard read. And when someone is in a rush and something's hard, you run the risk that they're going to skip it. So the two things that our eyes do very differently online is that number one, we have a really hard time digesting crowded or dense text. That's why those terms of agreements that you check, when you're on a website, you check off. That's why they're
For
always mushed
sure.
together, because they know no one's going to look at it.
Okay.
And so by keeping my paragraphs to 2 to 3 lines, adding a little bit of white space, at least, point 0.5 on Microsoft Word, that white space is your friend. It makes sure the reader isn't intimidated when they're reading, and increases the chances that they'll look at it. The second thing that we do when we're reading online that's really different than how we read on a page is that we jump all over the place on screens. We're super ADD. And so a couple things that I do to address that is that number one, I will use some minor design elements to draw the reader where I want them to go. I might use all caps if I want to make sure that I'm highlighting the company names. I might
Mm,
use a dash of color to differentiate the sections. Um, Italics, shading, all of those they don't require graphic design work, but your eye's going to go there. The other thing I do is that when I'm writing a sentence, I make sure to front load it, which means you put the good stuff at the beginning of the sentence because that skim reader might not ever get to the end. And then lastly, when I am deciding how to order my bullets, we don't read in sequential order when we're in a rush. We tend to start at the beginning, and then what's strange is that when we have extra time, we will jump down to the bottom. So we'll read the first bullet, then the fifth bullet. And bullets 2, 3, and 4 might not get read till the second round. And so you need to make sure that that first bullet hits them over the head. It's the thing that you are most proud of. And then that last bullet is something sort of secondarily impactful.
Are there any keywords that you usually like to use or you suggest not using? And then how do you layer in? So I've heard a lot of things where you talk about accomplishments need to be numbers or percentages because
Mhm.
people want to see what you made, save, or achieved, or what percent improvement or decreases in things that you've done. How do you typically work with clients and using numbers or stats or analytics to really drive home that message?
So what I do is I guide my clients through
Okay.
a series of questions so that I can understand four things. What did things look like when you started the role? What were you brought
Mhm.
on to do?
Okay.
Number two, what did things look like when you left or as you prepare to leave? Number three is what was your role in moving the needle from that beginning to end state? And then number four is how can you prove it? And so what? How did that benefit the company, the client, the customer? And what's your proof of that? And that's where those numbers come in. So sometimes they're tied to dollars, sometimes they're tied to um, hours and minutes, sometimes it's tied to headcount. Um, but it shows measure. Numbers always speak louder than words. So whatever you can do to
Mhm.
showcase that is important. But it's really
Okay.
powerful when it's told within context.
Great, great. Yeah, I like that four-part framework, kind of
Hmm.
how it was when you started and then where was it when it ended and what was the
Hmm.
overall impact on the
Yeah,
company. I think
yeah.
that's a really great framework when you start thinking about how you tell that story. And really everything you've shared seems like you're trying to line a story of who you are, what you've done, what makes you different and unique and gets your biggest accomplishments, your biggest achievements, the must-haves right at the top for someone to say, yes, I want to talk to that
Yeah.
person. So if we're walking through that story and there's so much news in the market about AI, right? Candidates using AI to write resumes, companies using AI bots to screen resumes or applicant
Mhm.
tracking systems, now screening and candidates are maybe not resumes are not getting looked at, maybe they're getting rejected even quicker because of this process. What have you seen, and what recommendations do you have with kind of the new age technology that's helping and assisting companies in the initial screening process that may make it more challenging or maybe make it more advantageous
Sure.
to your clients or to candidates that are applying for jobs? What's your perspective, and what do you have to share with candidates that are applying for jobs right now?
So you brought up 2 points. There's AI that we use to help
Mhm.
craft our narrative, and then there's the AU that hiring and decision makers are using.
Mhm.
Talking about the, companies, recruiters, HR managers, applicant tracking software system or ATS has been around for, I don't know, 20, 30 years. It has gotten much more advanced, thank the Lord, but it is basically a filing system that
Okay.
the system will parse all of your information, uh, and then use it to file it away. AI has been Now these systems have AI components, just like every other system on this planet now has an AI component. So it is
Mhm.
helping um, to help recognize certain phrasing, certain wording. And so what I tell people is do not forget about that. When you're applying online, if you make sure that you meet those must have and those at minimum requirements, that's what's most important. So you write first and foremost for humans. Think about the bots sort of secondarily. At the end of the day, there is a human behind the AI. There's a human behind the ATS, and
Mhm.
they're looking at these documents. I am not a huge fan of applying online as your sole point of entry, but that's sort of a different topic. Um,
Okay.
and I think a lot of people blame ATS and AI when really they are not going about their job search um, in a way that yields the greatest ROI. Um, in terms of how I recommend people use AI and how I use AI to craft the documents is number one, I'll use it for research. When I am answering that so what question at the fourth one I reference, I'll go
Mhm.
online and I'll say, let's say the accomplishment is about a product that I help launch. I'm going to go type that product into Grok or ChatGPT and say, what was the how was this product received in the media? How did it? What was the company's? If it's a public company, what was the company's market share at the beginning versus now? What were the revenues before versus after? And
Mhm.
it's it's an incredible resource for that because it helps you to give that context and tie your accomplishments back to the larger picture. Um, how, in terms of using AI with writing, I really caution people to use it as their assistant and not their boss. I have lost track of how many recruiters have told me that they are getting the exact same resume, with very little
Oh, the
differentiation.
same resume from different
Same
people.
resume, same cover letters, because
Oh,
AI is going to the same, it's using the same websites to get the examples. And
wow.
so I would I would make sure that everything you write feels and sounds like you, that you can speak to the points that you are highlighting. Um,
Mhm.
and then sometimes AI sort of sounds like word salad. Um, Pull out the extraneous adjectives, replace those with numbers where you can. Try to speak in plain speak as much as you can. That's an area where I feel like AI really gets it wrong. But most people can spot an AI resume a mile away, unless you are really taking the time to tailor it to your needs, and it's hard.
So there was something that I heard in there that resonates with me, and
Mhm,
I want to draw it out a little bit deeper if I can. So you mentioned you talk about the application process and applying to
mhm.
jobs, maybe not the best method. And so I was just curious, why do you feel that way? And then what do you recommend for candidates to do in this job market in terms of
Yeah,
finding the opportunity? I just want to dig a little bit deeper because
yeah,
that
yeah.
resonated with me. I have some thoughts on that too, but I really love your thoughts and perspective on that.
So when you look at the percentage of success of people applying online, especially now with uh, people have purchased, they have subscribed to these AI tools that let them spam hundreds of applications, and
Mm.
so recruiters are getting inundated, and
The
then they're
volume's very
relying
high.
on, right, and so they're relying on, um, number one, they're closing out. They have enough people in the first 24 hours to sort of run with things, so you really need to make sure the timing's right. But then number two, they are relying on their search. They're using search with LinkedIn to
Hmm.
find people. They're relying on their
Hmm.
networks. Um, your best chance of increasing your shot online is hitting it within the first 24 hours, making sure that you meet 100% of the must-haves and 70-ish percent of the nice to haves.
Okay.
And then wherever you can, try to figure out who the recruiter or the poster might be, and then following up with them immediately after. That's an extra step that a lot of people don't take that can help you to stand out a little bit. Uh, my m- my recommendations in terms of the best approach to job search is to spend 30% of your time figuring out what you want to do, the kinds of companies you want to do it, where you want to do it, um, and that way you have a target list and you're clear on what you're going after. Then I would recommend spending the rest, another 30-40% on who do you know at those companies? Who do you
Hmm.
know that might know people in those companies? Think of not just your friends and family, think about vendors you've worked with, consultants you've worked with, um, that person that you stand next to at your kids', soccer game. I call it the running my mouth strategy, but basically you're telling anyone, not I want a job, but this is what I do. And I really love this company. Can you think of anyone? Every time you get some names, talk to those people and ask for some additional names. That strategy has worked with my new grad daughter, my executive husband. And they found out about opportunities before the posting came out. They got calls saying the posting's coming out, and my
Hmm.
husband even got a job offer at a top bank without ever. And then after he signed the offer, they said, "Oh no, you haven't. gone through the ATS yet. Um, I was going to say something else and now I lost track. It might come to me, but anyway, do you have any other? I'll take a breath
No,
now.
thank you for that. I was just thinking about my career. And when I think about my journey over the course of the jobs that I've had, every single one of them was a referral or an introduction.
It's
And
been happening
so,
forever, forever. I
yeah, it's
got
been
them
happening
before the
forever.
internet. Yeah.
Yeah. And typically, like one of the jobs was almost a little bit of a career pivot or maybe an industry transition for me. So I had a lot of transferable skills in hospitality and customer service and various other types of client relationships and building and growing, not from necessarily a sales perspective, but kind of an internal customer service perspective.
Mhm.
And so transitioning into a new industry, I got referred and sitting down and having lunch. The conversation really, really just evolved into, wow, here's all the things you've done. Here's an industry of how we've done it. We'd like a different perspective. We really like your perspective from hospitality, from service, how you've grown accounts. And it was just an incredible conversation that without the referral or the
That's right.
introduction, I don't know that the company would have ever said, wow, let me look at
They,
this
yeah,
person
you would not
and
have
see
gotten
how they
past
would fit.
you would have not gotten past you wouldn't gone very far with making a career shift applying online because you're up against people that have been doing exactly what the posting asks for. It's much
That's that
easier to
must
convince a
have.
person. Yeah, exactly. It's much
If I
easier to
must have
convince
10
someone.
years of industry experience,
You're
it's
not going to have it.
transferable
Yeah,
industry
that's right.
experience, but it's not specific industry experience. And I think that's the power of the referral. When you make that referral from a trusted advocate, confident, or colleague, it's just so powerful. And it's amazing what can happen when those doors opened up
Yeah,
through that
yeah, and
word of mouth.
those informational interviews are powerful. The other thing that I was going to say is look beyond the job boards for
Mhm.
postings. Companies with smaller budgets, smaller companies don't, they don't use a lot of the job boards. Sometimes they'll use smaller free niche boards, but oftentimes they are sharing a job on their social media. Um, and so you can search LinkedIn for like hashtag hiring and you might find opportunities there. Sometimes
Mhm.
I've seen people say type in the name of common applicant tracking software systems and then um, attach the job title, like so workday plus the name of the job title, and then you're finding out about opportunities with different companies. I haven't tried that, but I've heard that. So
You've heard that.
go,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, go beyond LinkedIn Easy Apply and the Indeeds of the world.
Got it. So if we summarize the conversation and we go back to the beginning, we talked about kind of the summary of the resume and trying
Mhm.
to put the most relevant, important things that make you you. And when you work with your clients, you develop this story. The other thing you mentioned is when you develop a resume, you want to do it in ways that make it stand out. So you might change the coloring of some headlines, you might put in all caps, you might use some shading, you might create some white space. Really great ideas on ways that people look at information on a phone versus the way they read it on a computer. We want to make sure we address the must haves within the job description. So you want to pull up the job descriptions, you want to understand what the companies are looking for. And then you want to have ideally close to 70% of the nice to haves when you start looking and writing your resume. We want to use AI as kind of a research assistant. We don't necessarily want AI to write it because you had mentioned before that companies are now saying resumes look exactly the same, cover letters look exactly the same because the AI tools are going to the same websites to write your resume based on your experience. And so to really truly be differentiated, you can use it for research, but you want to make sure that you leverage your personal story and you infuse that into the resume. We want to pull out things that we can talk about in terms of accomplishments. When we start talking about what makes you different, you look at your 4-part framework and it's like, where was it when you started? Where was it where it ended? And if we look at the end, so what? So what did it mean for the company? What was the impact of your accomplishment and your achievement? And so I work with clients on interview preparation. So what really resonates with me is you're telling this story. And then at the end, it's like, so what? The so what is
Mhm.
so important because what you did is typically you and a team when it started to where it ended, but really what was that impact? And when you can articulate that impact, I think that's what makes you the differentiated candidate. And that's the differing factor that really sets you apart from everybody else. Are there any other topics that we might not have covered? And did I summarize everything that you shared. So if someone was looking, what's my key takeaways from this particular discussion? What can I do immediately? The power of the networking and leveraging what it is that you do, what it is that you want, the companies that you're looking for, sharing that with friends, with colleagues, with everyone out there, because you never know when that next opportunity is going to present itself. What's a last topic or two that you think that is relevant for anyone that's either working with you, maybe struggling to find a job today, or potentially looking to change jobs, but they haven't been in the market for a new job in 5 or
Yeah.
10 plus years?
So number one, that was a fantastic summation. I'm blown away
Thank you.
by how you were able to
Thank
capture
you.
all of that. The piece that we didn't touch on that is so important today, that maybe really wasn't as important 15 years ago, is your LinkedIn profile.
Okay.
LinkedIn is the world's greatest CRM to search for people, search for companies,
Mhm.
and so you use it to find them, but they're using it to find you. Um, you need to make sure that the themes from your resume are in your LinkedIn. But LinkedIn, a lot of people talk about keywords all day long on resumes. They're really important on LinkedIn. They're in the form of skills. And so what I do is I will look for key skills in the job postings, but then that's a perfect use of ChatGPT. What are those skills that are needed for this role? And then what you
Mhm.
do is you sometimes, like, ChatGPT calls it something that's different from what LinkedIn will call it. So you find the keyword that is closest to how LinkedIn states it. LinkedIn has a lot of people have purchased LinkedIn's recruiting tool, and they're using
Mhm.
it to search for talent. So they've got Dropbox, or they've got pre predetermined terminology in the database. Make sure that your company titles are the ones that are in LinkedIn's database. So if
Good point.
like VP of Finance, LinkedIn might call it Vice President of Finance. So
Okay.
you choose those. Make sure that you've got keywords in your headline, in your smattered with some cadence throughout your experience section, and then the platform gives you 100 skills. Try to populate as many as you can.
So, question for you. If I'm
Mhm.
someone that's going to come and work with you, I think about the resume, I think about the LinkedIn profile, and they sound to be both very, very important, not putting one over the other. But
Mhm.
what's the sequencing? Do you typically work with your clients first to develop the resume, and then from there, you help them go back and update their LinkedIn profile? How do we make sure that they're synergistic? Because you want the resume to be customized to each individual job offering, but the LinkedIn profile might be a little bit
Mhm.
more generic to showcase the true story and your overall experience over your career.
So 10 years ago, I would write the resume first and then the LinkedIn. Today,
Okay.
because they're so important, I write them at the same time,
Okay.
because you're going to pass your resume along to people, and then they're going to look you up online. And you need to
Okay.
make sure that you need to make sure the themes are the same. Um, and you might not share the level, you probably won't share the level of detail around revenues or show that you fixed a hot mess. Like, you're not going to show that stuff on LinkedIn because you don't want to throw companies under the bus, but the story themes are the same. So companies are going to look you up, and then um, if someone finds you on LinkedIn, they're going to ask for your resume. So it's sort of circular. That's
Okay.
why I recommend look at 5 to 10 job postings of interest. Write
Hmm.
for those. Then your resume is 95% ready to go. Your LinkedIn, you can't modify it, so you need to sort of make it address the majority of the job postings, and then I'll give direction on where to tweak and customize the resume.
That's great. And you had mentioned before that companies now are receiving so many applications within the first 24 hours that sometimes they're shutting down because AI bots, candidates are using different types of technologies to spread their resume to multiple postings at once. So you had mentioned connect with the hiring manager or HR when you
Mhm.
apply to make it differentiated. What would that message look like? Just curious. So do you do it through LinkedIn? Do you find maybe there's an HR point of contact email as a
Mhm.
part of the resume submittal process?
Yeah.
Like, what does that look like in terms of how you do it? Do you send an email and a LinkedIn note? And what is it that you say in that communication to the company so as that you can differentiate yourself, show your genuine interest in the position, and
Mhm.
ideally make you a differentiated candidate than most of the people that are applying for the role?
So I sometimes, there's roles that LinkedIn has on their easy apply, and the poster actually is listed there.
Okay.
Otherwise, you might have to do some sleuthing. Sometimes the job posting will say who the role reports to, and that's where you use LinkedIn search filters to try to find that. Um, if if you're sending a direct note to someone, if you see that they are active on LinkedIn, and you could tell that by looking at their activity, if they've liked things or commented on things, then they're probably on LinkedIn enough that it you could send them a note. You could send them a quick connection request, and you can, you've got, I forget how many characters, but you could just say, um, I wanted to let you know that I've applied to this role. I believe that my experience doing this for that would be a good fit. It's short
Okay.
and sweet and to the point. It's not, a diatribe.
So you're not going
Um,
trying to explain who you are and
no,
what you do
no,
in
it's
this
not
note.
your,
You want to,
yeah, it's not your cover letter. It's just a,
okay.
hey, I think I'm a great fit. If the person does not seem to be active on LinkedIn, then try to find their email.
Okay.
Mailscoop.io is my favorite. There's a couple of other ones, but it's free. I've yet to stump it. It's a great place to um, try to find it. And then, sometimes companies are active on other social media, Instagram, Facebook. So you might try those back channels, sort of see where the person seems to be.
And I was going to bring up one last thing as a part of our
Mhm.
discussion today. So thank you. You already went there. Social media. So LinkedIn, obviously, you had mentioned the professional network for people looking for jobs and
Mhm.
careers. When we talk about TikTok, when we talk about Instagram, when we talk about Facebook, how do you leverage those tools, if at all, when you're looking for a job? And what roles do those social media platforms potentially help you? Or is there any perspective that you give that they may hurt you in terms of content or things that you do on social media while you're searching for a job? I was just curious of your thoughts and perspective
Yeah.
on that.
Unless your personal social media includes content that aligns with what you're showing on your resume,
Okay.
I would lock it down, or or shows you as someone who is, digging wells in Uganda and doing so, just making you paint you perfectly. I would put your stuff on private,
Okay.
um, because you might be sharing things that are really important to you personally, but you don't want to. That's not a hill you want to die on with work.
Okay.
Um, but if companies have a presence on these other social media sites, smaller companies do. That might be a great place to try to connect with them through that. I would also recommend you you capitalize on social media. Make sure to follow their um, follow their sites, or follow their accounts. If they're posting, if you comment on things
Comment.
on LinkedIn, those are signals to the on the back end that you are more likely to be interested in an opportunity. That actually, that's some of the features that are present in LinkedIn Recruiter. I don't know how it works on Facebook or Instagram, but whatever you can do to sort of show your interest is helpful. Um, on LinkedIn, the other thing you can do is make sure that you're connected with other people in that company, because that also impacts how high you show up in a search.
Great. So leverage the tools for the
Mhm.
information and content that's being posted by the company, and then engage, show
Yeah,
engagement, show curiosity, show interest, make comments. And so, as though when you follow these threads, they'll start to see, if they go back and do some research, that you're highly engaged and interested, not just in the company, but maybe their mission or purpose or whatever it is that they might be
right,
doing as a
right.
part of
Yeah, no,
either this
yeah,
role or what they do as an organization as a whole in the marketplace.
yeah. I mean, LinkedIn, and I'm sure the other ones are too. They're like needy children. They need you to pay attention to them, and they reward that. So accepting connection requests, sending connection requests, liking, commenting, those are all signals that when you have the right skills and you have those
Mhm.
signals, you increase your chances of showing up high in search.
That sounds great. Well, I
Mhm.
really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your wisdom and your expertise in terms of resumes and LinkedIn profiles and social media and the things that are happening in the marketplace for clients that are applying for positions. Can you tell us just a little bit about how people can find you, how they can work with you, If someone is in need of resume services or help with their LinkedIn profile or just a general job search in general, tell us a little bit more how people can find you and work with you.
Sure. My website is Virginia Franco Resumes. I named it after myself because I wasn't being
Okay.
very creative. I have a newsletter that goes out twice a month where I share tips and techniques. I also have a Substack page that I have started about 6 weeks ago where I share a lot of um, tactics and techniques that I use so that, to help people that, don't have the means or the time to work with someone one-on-one. But yeah, I'm on
Okay.
all the socials.
So VirginiaFrancoResumes.com is where they go, and then they submit their information as a contact us for potential
That's right.
interest in working together.
Yes, exactly.
Great. Any last minute thoughts or anything that you'd like to share, or anything that we didn't cover today that you'd like to leave with a parting note?
No, you tackled all of them. Write for the online eye, be targeted, and show alignment with the opportunities that you're going after. If you do those three, you can't go wrong.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate you joining us today and for sharing all of your wisdom and expertise with everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Virginia.